All right, so this is Suez 73 from GDW, and it is the Battle of Chinese Farm from the Yom Kippur War. It's from Frank Chadwick, and I finally got it on the table here. So I'm just playing through scenario one, the objective of which is just the nighttime turn, first turn of the game. And the objective is for the Israelis to get a force established on the west bank of the Suez Canal. And that's happened. The Giloa amphibious transport unit is ferrying paratroopers over into Deversoir, and so that is happening. They actually have enough points worth of Israelis on the west bank of the canal to win the scenario at this point. The only way the Egyptians can salvage something at this point, and this is a scenario that I feel like the Egyptians are probably going to lose every time. It's just I don't know how balanced this particular scenario is. They're going to get shot to pieces along the road here in the opening turn, but they are inflicting some losses on the Israelis, and they are creating a situation where, as the battle progresses, it's going to become a problem for the Israelis. They're going to have to go in and clean out Chinese Farm. These ditches on here that overlook the road and impart a zuck onto that road, you get in there and you're going to start to take some lumps that are not easy for you to get back. And the losses are going to start to tell. They're going to start to mount up, and it's going to make things difficult on them. Now, in terms of gameplay, the game is actually not that hard to learn. It's a pretty straightforward design, as most of Frank's games are. My issue with the game so far has been the fiddliness of the bits, because you got your strength rating on one side, the movement class on the right, your NATO symbol, all the formation information, and the art's just dated on it. It would be really nice if there was color-coded, brigaded units. That would make it easier to know certain things. But the key information for combat is on the reverse side of the counter. So you're constantly flipping these counters over, tallying things up. You pretty much almost guarantee both players almost have to have a pad of paper and a pencil with them to play this game, because there's just too many things to keep track of that you just can't. The markers on the board are not going to suffice for that to remember certain things. So I have some markers I've just placed on the board to remember that only 6 of the 7 points of Israeli paratroopers have been ferried across by the Giloas. Which brings me to the cool part of the game, which is the sequence of play. In the game, all players get the same number of movement points to work with. And so this is a night turn, and it's a special night turn, so they got 7 movement points to work with, both sides. Every unit has 7 movement points, regardless of what kind of unit it is. However, the catch is different types of transportation, different types of movement. It costs different points to move those guys. So leg units are going to be more expensive than, say, tracked or wheeled units and so forth. And so what's going to happen is the Israelis are going to take the first impulse. They're going to decide how many movement points they're going to spend, and then they do those movements, and then they shoot. And the combat, the shooting is actually simultaneous. Both sides are going to trade shots at one another, the attacker and the defender. When they're done, units that have been shot at and taken hits, they can try to withdraw and recover some of those hits. And for the Israelis, they can recover some of their tanks and perhaps rebuild those and get some of their strength points back, which leads to more fiddliness in the sense that you have to put strength loss markers under units that have taken losses. So, and then there's times when you first take losses, you put the marker on top of the unit, and then after the withdraw phase, it goes underneath, showing it's now a permanent established fact, the losses that are on that unit. So that would be fine if you only had one unit in a hex, but when you have a stack of units, you got to really pay attention to that. Once you've finished all of that for your side, the other side spends movement points on their track, and they do the same thing. And so back and forth it goes. So the fewer movement points you do in your impulse, the more combat there's going to be. Now, I don't know how well that's going to model things in the long term. It feels like slowing down the movement is going to cause more casualties than speeding up the movement, which is, feels a little counterintuitive to me in that sense. I think that moving very fast would cause more casualties than slow and more deliberate, but there you go. So we'll have to see how that pans out over the long term. But that's that's kind of the cool thing. I like the idea of it. I just don't know how well it's going to model things in the long term. So it goes back and forth until you have to spend at least one movement point on your impulse. When all the impulses are done, then you move on to the next turn. And during the night, at the end of night turn, you can get some losses back, some replacements back. If you withdrew a unit in order to recover losses, how many number of losses you recovered, you end up with a disruption token on top of that unit. And to get rid of that, you have to spend movement points to get rid of it. So it's harder to get that unit back into action. And so I feel like it's going to get really chaotic. And again, that's where I think it might be helpful to have a pad of paper and a pencil to keep track of what's going on with some of the units and who's doing what. So the long and the short of it is, there's a cool simulation here, but it does feel a little bit dated. So I'm liking the game, but I'm not liking some of the fiddliness with it. I feel like there's got to be a better way to do this. Like, he's got such great ideas in this game, but the way it's presented, it's making it a little bit hard to play, I think. So that's my take on it, at least for now. We'll see how it develops as things go. So that's Suez 73, 1981 game design from Frank Chadwick.